What is up, Halas Huddlers? We have a special episode tonight. If you have not, go back and watch part 1, part 2, and part 3 of the Halas Huddle Mock Offseason to grade us, to berate us, to tell us how awful we are. We are bringing in Gary Rapaport Ross to be our deciding vote here on how good we did in this mock offseason. But before we do, I am Rob Schwartz with Bear Goggles On. Bob and Justin cannot be with us tonight, but please hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't yet, because we have not done the drawing, yet, quickly go back to parts 1, 2, and 3. Leave a comment. Okay, all you got to do is be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you will get 1, 2, or 3 entries, depending on how many comments you make, one on each video, into a drawing for a giveaway for a free Bears jersey or some Halas Huddle swag. Okay, so go do that now. Put this on pause. Go do parts 1, 2, and 3 before you forget. Then come back to this one and see what Gary thinks about how we did. Gary, welcome.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you having me on tonight. And this should be an interesting episode. I know you filled me in on what you guys did, and I watched the first 3 parts, and I think we'll have a little fun tonight.
Yeah, I will preface this with there were some text messages that Gary was sending before he knew I was going to invite him on the show of comments between parts 1, 2, and 3. And I was like, all right, Gary's just coming on. We're going to bring him on. He's going to tell us just how awful we did. So with that, we're going to jump right into the salary cap. Look, are the Chicago Bears in cap hell? A lot of people see where they are at from, a negative standpoint, right? And they just think the Chicago Bears are screwed. They have no money. Look, the Seattle Seahawks just won the Super Bowl and have some of the most salary cap space in the NFL. Why are the Chicago Bears set up where they are right now? Are they in trouble? What's going to happen? Gary, quickly tell me before we move to the next slide where it actually shows some of the stuff and what we did to try to fix it on the Halas Huddle. Do you think, and I know you already shook your head, I know where you're going with it, but do you think are the Bears in cap hell?
People that know me know that I favor polls, right? So I think he has done a pretty good job, and I get crap all the time for it. Has he made some decisions with the salary cap, with some contracts he's given out lately that are a little prohibitive? Absolutely, but they're not in cap hell. We know teams push cap down the line. There's ways to extend with a restructure. There's ways to manipulate it. Now, would I do a ton of moves this offseason? Probably not, but one thing that people need to remember whenever we're talking about cap, just a high level, and I know Rob, you'll get into this with the next slide, you still need to have about 10 million roughly for your draft class and 5 to 7 million to operate for the season. So at minimum, you've got to open, we'll say 17 million, right, on the higher end right now. So, right, so you 9 million negative plus 17, right? That's 28 million you got to figure out, plus then whatever else you want to add on to the year. So just some basic numbers for our fans to think about as we're talking about these slides.
Yeah. So you mentioned it, right? So they're negative 10, almost negative 11 million right now for salary cap. But
that includes the 300, by the way. I was looking at Spotrac and it's about negative 11, you said, and I was before the show, I was looking at it, and that's with the new salary cap risen too. I know some fans on Twitter and other social media have talked about how, we're going to get all this extra cap because the negative 10, 11, depending on what numbers you look at, factors in the new cap projections. It's not factoring in last year's.
Yeah. And even when we did, so this was our part 1 episode, right? And even when we did that part 1 episode, that salary cap number was not released yet. We did not know what that total amount was going to be. However, Spotrac and over the cap, they do a rough estimate of where they think the cap is going to be at. So when you saw those numbers prior to the official numbers coming out, that was pretty darn close. In fact, I think we were at negative 9 when we started in part 1. Pretty darn close to where it ended up being, right? So they overestimated a little bit on Spotrac. I don't know where they were at over the cap, but yeah, I mean, people just hear that and then they think, oh, well, they're going to have 20 some $1 million. No, that's not. You're looking at raw data with projections ahead of time, and now you're getting the real data with projections, or not projections, with hard numbers, and it's basically the same thing.
Fair,
so,
yeah. Let's get into this.
Yeah. So look, Bob Weiss, Justin Oniemi, and myself, we went through and made some moves. I agree with you. Look, I don't think this is a great free agency class. So to be honest, I don't really think that there's, at least in what the Chicago Bears need, I don't think that they should be making these types of moves because, and we mentioned it, you got a lot of young players who are going to need contract extensions over the next 2-3 years. And that includes your quarterback. The Chicago Bears have not had to pay a quarterback the way that they're going to have to pay a quarterback ever.
And by that time, we know the cap's going up, Rob, and we've seen some of the contracts. Unless Caleb pulls a Tom Brady and says, hey, I'll take a discount, right, to get some better players around me, you're probably looking at somewhere between 55 and 65 a year for Caleb when it's all said and done, assuming he continues on this trajectory, which we all believe he will. So you're going to have to figure something out, right? So I know people are like, well, win now in the next 2 years and push all this cap down. Their cap sheets are really good right now for 27 and 28, which is great news. But if we do all these shrewd moves to open up cap this year and say, go for it, well, now your cap's not great for 27 and 28. And we could talk about that a little bit right now, and got a couple different ideas, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So for example, on our show, we traded DJ Moore. It was a move that took place after some of the other moves, leading into the draft. But look, DJ Moore at his age, he had a down year when it comes to production on the stat sheet. The contract money is good for some teams, but not good for others. For example, the Buffalo Bills are in a tough spot with their salary cap. Not hell, but in a tough spot, their salary cap. So like a team like that wouldn't be able to probably take that on unless they maybe trade a player back, which I know you and Bob had talked about in our group chat. And then I think Justin brought it up on the show, but getting a player back like Ed Oliver, and that was just an example, but if you can bring some of that back and swap the cap and you're getting a player in return, it's a little bit different. But for this mock offseason, we decided to take what probably is his draft value. I don't think it's his actual value. I'm sorry, his draft. Yeah, trade capital. I don't think that's what his value is on the team. I think he's worthy of much greater than being a fifth rounder. But if you go back and you see some of these older wide receivers who have been productive in the past, maybe not as productive the year that they're being traded, they're going for 4th, 5th round picks. We had talked about possibly making it a 6th in DJ to get a 4th. Well, the Bears don't have a 6th round pick, so that doesn't work. Maybe it can be some type of conditional pick for 2027 if you wanted to do that, but we wanted the pick this year. So yeah, again, we got a 5th round pick for him, but it freed up space. I want to say, if I recall, it came up to about 16 million that they would be
16
saving.
and a half, whether you trade him or restructure. And I know you guys did episode 1 before the Super Bowl and talking to a couple of my contacts and someone that was down there. At least the scuttlebutt says the Bears might be leaning towards restructuring DJ, like option 1. And I get it, right? Ben talked publicly very well about him. I think some of that public talk was just public talk, and there's some different feelings internally. But I will say, though, even if they restructure him, it's not a true extension, it's a restructure. So that means you're just pushing the cap down a year or two. And you're going to have bigger issues next year, right? So DJ's at 28 and a half now. And I think last time I looked, his 27 cap numbers going to be like 32 then, right? So it's going to even be harder to move him next year if that's the case, if you do a true restructure. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't with DJ. I do think you'll be able to get a 4th rounder, like as you were mentioning, Rob, maybe a 4th, maybe a 5th, depending on the team. I think there'll be a little bit bidding for him, but you're right. I think fans that want a 2nd for DJ or a late 1st because of what he could be, right, on a different team, it's probably far-fetched. But could you probably get a fourth rounder with a little bit of bidding out there? Yeah, or as you said, maybe you have to give a seventh. Maybe that's the way to do it, right? You give a seventh and you get a fourth in return. Since we have 2 sevenths this year, our future seventh, you can even give up to get him. But yeah, I think you're going to have to play with DJ's number absolutely this offseason, one way or another.
Yeah. So if you do that, whether it's the restructure, whether it's the trade, and then you cut Tremaine Edmunds, who I had a hard time cutting, Bob and Justin did not.
I agree with Bob and Justin. I think it's an easy cut because that's a Flus guy, and I don't think Poles would have signed him without Flus. And real quick, I think a lot of these moves that we're going to talk about, right or wrong, Ryan Poles, as much as I love him, he's very influenced by his coaching staffs. And he was a young GM with Flus, and I think he listened way too much to their input. And now we've got Ben, and hopefully he's listened to Ben because we saw that with this last draft. Ben had a ton of influence, right or wrong, and the same goes for DA, good and bad, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I don't know if Tremaine would be here per se if it wasn't for Flus, and even like the defensive tackle, right? OG Anunoby, the first one that he tried getting, and then thankfully the foot happened. And I say thankfully because he hasn't really done much since he's left either with Pittsburgh and a couple other teams. So Luce had a little too much influence on who he has there. So for me, move on from Tremaine. Thank you. But I don't think you'll take a hometown discount if you try to do a restructure and sign.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I came around to it because to me, an off the ball linebacker is probably the least, or most, I shouldn't say least valuable, most easily replaced position on the defense. So you might not get the caliber of play that we're getting from Tremaine Edmunds, but you're going to get something close. And I think you can easily move on just because of the cap situation that they're in. To help with that, we also, we mentioned it a little bit with Cole Kmet. We gave him a 2-year extension. Look, Joe Thuney, I joked about it, but I still feel this way. You let him have as many years as he wants, finish out his career here in Chicago. He is that good of a player. And then Jonah Jackson, we gave him a 2-year extension to try to just keep this line in play for the next few years.
Yeah, I'm just going to quibble with you a little bit for Cole. I think to get the cap low enough, right? Because I project Cole, just my opinion, more like a $7 to $8 million number 2 tight end. And people still might say that's way too much for a number 2, but I think Cole brings a lot to the table. Still could give you 600 yards on a good year in receiving. His blocking has improved under Ben, right? And we know Ben loves 2 tight end sets and even 3 tight end sets. So I think if you give him a 3-year, and I know you and I were talking about before, but just for our fans, 3 for 21, right? And maybe guaranteed the 2 years with the 3rd year being a team option, something like that, just to spread it a little bit more. That'd be my only quibble with what you did there.
I have no qualms or problems with that, especially because you specifically said that there's an out, after that after that 2nd year going into the 3rd year. So yeah, no issues with that. For re-signings, we decided to go with Kevin Byard over Jaquan Brisker. I know he's 33, right? But he is in my opinion, better player. And I do think that you can get him much cheaper just because of his age. And it seems like there's a lot of interest, at least vocally, from him on many occasions that he still wants to be here. And then DeMarco Jackson was a signing to just kind of, help soften the blow with Tremaine Edmunds being sent out. And, we talked about it off show. You are the one that actually put that bug in my ear about, if the TJ Edwards situation is as bad as it might be, maybe they come up with some injury settlement. So that is one thing we had considered on the show. And then they already signed Theo Benedict, but we also signed Theo Benedict because he was an exclusive rights free agent. It just made sense.
Yeah, to give Adam Hogue credit real quick on CHGO on their show today, he did mention he was hearing that TJ should be back for training camp.
Okay.
Okay, but TJ was already slow, right? So, to me, at this point, TJ is no better than a Sam linebacker, and you've got Sewell for that role, and he's got to get back healthy too. But in this defense, I feel like Sam linebackers are a dime a dozen. You don't need to be paying your same linebacker $10+ million a year.
No, you don't, especially someone who clearly has lost a step in the last year and a half.
Right. And unfortunately, like my comparisons to TJ Edwards or Danny Trevathan, right? Danny Trevathan was good his first few years with the Bears, and then injuries started catching up, and unfortunately, you got to get let go and then retire. And I just hope that doesn't happen to TJ. He's been a great guy, but
am I
he's kind of on that trajectory.
Am I remembering correctly that at one point he got a torn pectoral muscle while he was here?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. All right. So this essentially gave us roughly $49 million to play with. But again, as Gary, you mentioned, and I know we had mentioned it too when we did the show, you're going to need about 10 to 12 million of that for your draft class. So there's not as much there as it looks. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people on social media tend to forget is you got to pay your rookies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on. We are going to move on to our free agency section of the episode, of our mock offseason. That was part 2. So if you did not check out part 2, please go back and look at that, or just hang out here. But again, if you don't subscribe and comment, you're not getting an entry into our drawing, into our giveaway. But you'll see what we did here in just a minute. I'm going to preface this before we even get to the names. Gary, do you think the Bears are going to take any big swings this offseason? We kind of hinted the fact that it's not the best free agency class. There are some big names, but I feel like the middle part of the free agency class isn't quite as ripe as some of the other years. I don't know if you're going to see overpays always happen in free agency, but I don't feel like there's that name that is going to be like they're going to get a lot of big money. I mean,
I feel like this free agency class has good depth. Like if you're looking to fill out the back half of your roster with very solid veterans and depth, that's great. But to your point, to make that big splash, I think it would have to come via trade more than free agency. You know, like for example, George Pickens, right? Bears aren't going after George Pickens, right? He's one of the big top free agents. We know that. We're going to discuss Trey in a minute, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But after that, even like, and we'll get to defensive tackle too, like John Franklin Myers, but he's really been a journeyman too. Like he had a very solid year, and I'll give you my opinion on defensive tackle, especially with Dexter. And as you know, some news I shared with you offline, but like, yeah, I think it's a good free agency class when it comes to depth, like the bottom third of your roster, middle part of your roster. But yeah, I think trade's going to have to happen if you really want to make a splash. And I don't know how many teams are looking to trade guys. I got a couple guys in mind that we've talked about, but I think it's going to be hard this year, especially even though with all those cap moves you just talked about, it's still 37 million that we have total, right? So
yeah, exactly. Now I will say on this episode, or on this this series, mock offseason series, the Halas Huddle did take a bit of a big swing. So let's move over and we'll take a look at that really quick. We got the former New Orleans Saint. Screw the Bengals. We got the former New Orleans Saint, Trey Hendrickson, who was also there with Dennis Allen, by the way. But the problem is, there's two problems. One,
he's the big name, and there's going to be a bidding war.
There could be a bidding war, but I also think he could get tagged, right? And then they might try to trade him again. So that could be the second problem.
If the Bengals tag him again, first of all, getting tagged twice, it's even a bigger cap hit against them. So they've got to make their own moves just to absorb that double cap hit. So kudos to the Bengals if they want to play around with that, but I think they're even smart enough not to know that. But yeah, he's the big defensive end in free agency, right? There's him, there's the aging Khalil Mack, and there's a couple other middle tier guys, but again, nothing that's going to be like wowing you other than maybe some solid rotational players, but nothing that's going to be the guy that, you know, the Bears fans want. And one thing I want to preface in is that if you look at a DA system, and I forgot if you guys talked about this, DA likes his defensive ends, and I know everyone wants Crosby, Max, and other guys, but he likes his rush to come from the back seven, not the front four. Really, he wants those run-setting edges, and everyone's going to say, "Well, he had Mackin with the Raiders. He had a young Cam Jordan. He did have Trey for 2 years while he was producing, but I really don't think that's what DA wants. Can he use a great edge? Absolutely, but I want people to kind of remember that as we go through, especially the draft and what he's looking for, and even in free agency, because they have Booker to play that speed edge, if you want to call it, right? He's really looking for, I hate to say it, a Dom Rob body type opposite Sweatin. I don't mind the Trey signing. I think he's coming off similar injury to Jalen Johnson, right? And we saw Jalen not produce, and that's going to be a whole discussion about what to do with Jalen this offseason because he's out of guaranteed money, and we didn't really talk about that in the cap section, but just real quick on him, like, do you have to give him a restructure and extension just to maybe give him some guaranteed money, right? Because is he going to want to play without a guaranteed going into the year, just as a separate note? But Trey, you're probably looking at 2 years, $50 million with 30 guaranteed, ballpark, right? At minimum.
I think we are at 55 million actually.
Okay, so you guys went higher than just me off the top of my head with kind of what I would look for. But again, where is he with his recovery? Does his abductor muscle completely fall off? Like, we don't know all the details of his injury and his surgery. We just know that it was quote unquote similar to Jalen Johnson, right? So,
yep.
Is he still going to be the Trey Hendrickson that's going to produce 12 to 15 sacks for the next 2 years? That's what you're paying for.
I mean, the answer is you hope, right? I mean, that's the hope. But to your point, and look, obviously from a body type, I still think he fits the DA system. But he's not the best run defender.
No.
Where if you mentioned Khalil Mack, and I guess people think of him as a sack artist, but he, like Montez Sweat, is very good at containing and very good at stopping the run. And I would say Max Crosby's up there too. And to your point, when we get into the draft, there's one name that if he falls, I feel like he is someone we didn't mention on the mock because I don't think he's going to fall, but maybe I'll mention him tonight.
And let's throw out another name, and the Bears, as we know, were pretty close to acquiring this player at the trade deadline. And you and I have talked about him offline. Is I do wonder if Poles calls the Jets again on Germaine Johnson because that's your prototype defensive end. He is going into last year's deal, and one of the rumors was that he wasn't willing to sign a contract extension with the Bears at the time. But maybe after seeing what the Bears did this year and some of the stuff that the Jets have done this offseason with their coaching staff, which feels like throwing darts at the wall, for lack of a better word. But
100%.
Maybe he has a change of mindset that if Poles approaches them and says, okay, deadline, you're asking for a second with no contract attached to it. Well, guess what? We're going to give you nothing more than a fourth now. Your SOL, right? Because I think at the deadline, Bears were not offering anything higher than a third without that contract, agreed to, basically.
And
so that is at least a target that I would have Bears fans keep in the back of their mind, that Germaine Johnson revisit trade offer.
Yeah, and actually it came up after you and I discussed that via text as a possibility, or not. It's not something that you were, I think, hearing as a rumor, but it was more just basing it off what they did last year. And you just came to the conclusion, like, be ready. It could happen again. Right. A New York Jet beat reporter that I was listening to a podcast randomly had actually talked about he's probably going to be available again. And I was like, that's literally what Gary just said like 2 weeks ago, as his suggestion for the Bears potentially moving forward. And he is not just a beat reporter. He's also a Jets fan who became a Jets beat reporter, kind of like, Nicholas Moriano. If I'm recalling correctly, actually said they'd probably take a fourth. So right on point right there. Good job.
Yeah. And the other name real quick in this mock free agency, and it was discussed in our Discord, earlier today. do the Giants finally listen on Kayvon Thibodeau, right? Because he, in my opinion, I know he's a little bit lighter than Sweat, but I still feel like he's a Sweat type player, right? He's not a true speed guy. He can give you 10 to 12 sacks in a perfect season, but realistically is more of the 8 to 10 range. And again, he and Booker can kind of rotate on one end, or Booker doesn't have to play as many snaps. That's what the goal is, right? So, but the rest of the mock free agency that you guys did, I don't love CJ coming back as your safety. I feel he would be better coming back as your tweener, right? Who can be your third or fourth safety, in a pinch. I know you guys mentioned on your show that he had a great year with the Eagles, but then the Eagles got rid of him, right? We know that CJ's got some past history. He did not do well for the Texans at safety. They cut him very quickly.
Like
so as a true safety, and again, part of these cuts have been his, we'll call it behind the scenes stuff, and we don't know exactly what took place, but we know there's some stuff. Yeah, if he's willing to cut, CJ would be like in the fourth wave. Like if some team wants to overpay him, thanks, have a great time. But he would be like a guy I would wait till like the fourth wave to see who's left out there.
Yeah, so I actually put an asterisk next to his name on the image because I wanted to make that point, is that CJ Gardner would not be a re-signing necessarily in the sense of you thinking of it a re-signing. That's why I didn't include him on the previous slide. CJ Gardner Johnson, we let go to free agency, see what he could come up with. Couldn't find anything, and I think we brought him back for like $2 or $3 million per year. So I mean, it wasn't like,
yeah, I don't even know if I would pay him that much. I would give him maybe slightly over the vet min at that point is the fourth, like basically what he did this year, right? So, and the other two guys, Devin White, sure, like it doesn't like move me one way or another. He's had some good years. He's had some really bad years, right? There's a reason that, his former team moved on from him. And then you guys brought in a rotational defensive tackle. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And with Devin White, I mean, it's kind of just a stopgap because maybe you get a guy in the draft. I don't really love the linebacker group in the from a free agency class standpoint. So, I mean, again, to your point, you can probably get depth guys without a problem, but no one to me that stands out as a starter outside of the bigger ticket guys who, Devin Bush and I'm blanking on the other Devin.
Devin White, to your point.
No, there's another one, right? There's three that I'm pretty sure in this free agency class. And both the other ones are projected to get quite a bit more. But either way, just a stopgap. Let's see what we can bring in from the draft, right? And Levi, I know, was Bob's favorite name to try to say on here. And yeah, to your point, he was a rotational defensive tackle for the Detroit Lions. He's going to be a rotational defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, looking at some of the names, Bobby Wagner, ageless wonder, great guy, but Levante David, another guy, ageless wonder. Demario Davis, ageless wonder. Kenny Murray, fine, but he's probably going to be overpriced. Caden Ellis, again, ageless wonder. Matt Milano, I don't need another Bills linebacker. Anzalone, we know him, but doubt that fits. And then you get like Quincy Williams, Alex Singleton. I got a lot of these guys that are in their like late 20s, early 30s that just are great. Like, would I love a couple of these guys to be an upgrade over Agbamiga? Great, sure. Because that better depth. But do I think any of these guys are going to be starters? No.
No, exactly. All right. Well, we hinted at the draft. Now we can go talk about the draft.
Awful.
So I've gotten a little bit further in my draft preparation for I'm going to what's the phrase that I'm looking for? Oh gosh, whatever. I'm going to push the content that we're projected to have next week, but we are going to have a NFL draft guru on the show, someone who basically specializes in that, and that's basically what he's known for. So we will have him on the show next week as well. Tease, that was the word I was looking for. I'm going to tease it. Radio talk. right? There's no radio talk in podcasting, so it's a little bit different. But anyway, so I'm a little bit further along now than I was before. That said, I still don't hate the route that I took. So I will also preface this. There were no trades allowed. Would I expect them to make some trades? 100%. 100%. But let's quickly look at what we did. And then, Gary, I'll have you comment on it. And then maybe where you might go a little bit differently. Maybe names or maybe positions, right? Like maybe you think we went too high going for one position or we waited too long for a position, something like along those lines. All right. And I forgot to change the graphic underneath. That still says one big swing for the D line. So guess what? It still fits. Still fits because in the first round at pick 25, the Chicago Bears get the guy that I am currently pounding the table for. I just think the fact that you watch this team allow 5-6 yards on first down consistently, it really bothered me. It really bothered me. And you just need someone who would come in and just fill up that space, plug that hole. But at the same time, McDonald has some sneaky pass rush upside. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to get you 4 sacks, 5 sacks a season, but probably 1 or 2. And what really I think you're going to see, and I don't know if they consider it pressures per se, because I think you got to get to a certain depth to get to the quarterback to be a pressure, but just push that line of scrimmage back right there in the middle. And that's what he's going to do. He's just an anchor, a beast. So guess what? That graphic still fits. They took that swing. And then I'm going to go real fast through it because I'm not going to go as in-depth as I did with McDonald. But Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, safety, long, lengthy safety out of Toledo in the second round. There's a linebacker, Tareen York, out of Texas A&M. I know that we got a lot of flack for that in the comments, even from Bob Weiss on the show live. Mike Washington, just to get a different type of running back in here. Malachi Lawrence, a defensive end, again, lengthy. Kevin Coleman, another Mizzou wide receiver. Eric Gentry, a big 6'6" guy out of USC. And then I know you gave me some flack for the Jalen Farmer pick out of Kentucky. Again, it was literally a dart throw of a guy that I just recalled his name at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, so overall, the idea of your draft, I think, is great. I would change a couple things, so I'll just start. So one thing I think as fans we need to keep an eye on, and especially when, the guys that we follow, the Bruglers, Daniel Jeremiah's, etc., that throw out their mock drafts, it appears there's going to be a run on defensive tackles in the first round. So if your heart is set on a defensive tackle, do you potentially have to slightly trade up for one? Just something to keep in the back of your mind, right? And everyone loves Caleb Banks. He's been coming on hot again. I have PTSD when it comes to Florida defensive linemen and Dexter. And one thing we didn't really talk about was, some Dexter news I got where, would the Bears be approaching him if he's willing to take a hometown discount, right? But that's more of a Dexter to me is a rotational defensive tackle. And I like Katie McDonald. I don't know if I like him as much as you do. You know me. I'm Mr. Hoosier. He didn't impress me too much in that game. Like, he had some flashes towards the end of the game, but I think he's more. I think he's more
Texas tape.
The true nose guard, right? Your new true nose tackle. I think the other defensive tackles, Banks and Hunter, probably provide more pass rush to your point. So it's really what flavor you're looking for at that point and kind of navigating, right? Even Peter Woods, right? Knock on Peter Woods. He's really good, but is his first step always there, right? Again, PTSD with Dexter. But I do think you have the right two positions, rounds 1 and 2, right? Either safety, then defensive tackle, or defensive tackle, then safety, right? So, I think those are the first two positions they targeted. And I do think there's more of a chance they trade down from, say, 25 to 35 and pick up another third rounder on draft day. I know you said you didn't do any trades, but that besides the DJ trade from earlier, but that's where I think realistically fall unless the perfect player falls to them. And again, this draft we know is not top heavy, is very good depth and good starters, but maybe never going to be the all pro starters, except a few guys.
Yeah, I mean, like Jeremiah Love to me stands out as like the stud type player in the draft.
Caleb Downs, right? Those kind of
yeah,
guys.
exactly. But there's so few and far between in this draft. I 100% agree with you that's why, I mean, I prefaced this, I think, on the tweet that I put out about McDonald's. Like, it's not a sexy pick at all. Like most people who don't follow or don't like get into the draft the sense that like we do, they're going to be like, who? Like, why are you taking a defensive tackle? Like, you need a defensive end because everyone, again, thinks edge rusher. And again,
and defensive tackle is probably the deepest too. So keep in mind, like, you could probably get like a true nose in like the third round if you decide to adjust your draft differently too. Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. For example, at this pick, I could have went Akeem Messidor, right? I know he's older, but I could have went Akeem Messidor. And then in the second round, I could have went Lee Hunter. Like those two, I mean, but to prove your point, like I could have went end and then DT if you wanted to go end early. It's possible.
Just out of curiosity, was Parker available in round 1 too?
TJ Parker was available, yes.
So again, Parker is like, right. So TJ Parker is your stereotype Dennis Allen defensive end, right? And 100%. Also could kick inside on, pass rush downs too. So I could see Parker being definitely a target in round 1. And I know he's been mocked to other Bears, but like if you're going edge, you hope the 2024 TJ Parker shows up, not necessarily the 2025, but think of him as a lot better.
Right? Like
Peter Woods had a good year this year, but yeah.
His 24 film was better.
Fair enough.
And I think that's partly, you had mentioned the step. I feel like it actually looked faster in 24 than it did in 25. So I'm curious to see if I can find what his playing weight was in 24 versus 25. I just wonder if he put on some pounds and
again, down. McNeil Warren, we both love him. He's your versatile safety. The league is moving to these big time safeties, right? Kyle Hamilton, Imunwara that just had a great, Super Bowl with Seattle as a rookie. These big time 6'2", 6'3" safeties seems to be the next big thing in the NFL and how to utilize them. So definitely something to keep in mind with that pick. Third round, I hate the pick. I know Bob hated the pick. I think there's plenty of other linebackers that play better. And yeah, I'll be a homer here. I'd rather take Aiden Fisher in say round 4, my boy at Indiana, middle linebacker, heart of the team. He's more production over true athlete. But sometimes you don't need the stud athlete. I know it's the NFL and speeds. He's got all that. But he's,
York is that way, though, too. York is that way, too. York is that way, too. He's not athletic either. He just has an IQ.
No, I mean, Fisher's got athleticism, don't get me wrong. But he's not like your super athletic linebacker and, top-end speed,
Right. But I'm just saying, to your point, like, at this point in the draft, that's probably what you're going to get with most of these guys, right? You're going to get
absolutely right, and
just football players, but not necessarily, on the freak. What is it? Freak 300.
You're not going to get like Tremaine Edmunds athletic when he was younger. His pure athleticism and pure speed type, I guess.
Yeah,
exactly. What got him drafted so high in the first place.
Exactly. Except for maybe at your skill positions. Because then you're just looking for speed.
I would actually like to see you move down in the draft and try to find a running back that maybe could be a dual threat to kind of replace Roschon Johnson and the Travis Homer position all in one. Now, I don't know if Mike Washington would fit that role. There are some other running backs in the draft that I feel can fit that role better, being your third down maybe back, but also a gunner on special teams or even a kick returner, and maybe then you don't have to bring back Devin Duvernay, or at least you bring back Devin Duvernay and that running back could compete with him for reps or at least be the backup, right? So I think that's a little high for running back, at least in this particular draft, if you're not going for one of the top guys. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I can.
And then, again, the rest of it's fine. Like, I know Malachi Lawrence is getting a lot of publicity right now, and because he had a great, was it Shrine Bowl or Was it the
West
Senior
Shrine
Bowl?
Bowl.
I can't remember which one it was.
I think it was West
But
Shrine.
Jalen Farmer, I joked with you only because you're going to have to replace Ryan Bates this year, right? I don't think you're re-signing Ryan Bates. So, I mean, he was fine this year, right? He only had a few snaps other than, field goal unit. So you're looking for someone that could truly snap and play. So I'll be a homer again. I'd rather see them take Pat Coogan in that spot, right? And I think actually Pat Coogan can go as high as the 5th round and somewhere between 5th and 7th, depending on what you think of him. A little bit of older prospect, but he snapped for the championship Hoosiers as well as he played guard early on at Notre Dame. So I think that's the type of guy you're looking for more than a true guard, because I think they wanted that with Newman last year, and then they realized, as we saw in training camp, you really can't snap. So unless they're really working with Newman this entire offseason, which I don't know if they are not, saying, hey, you got to learn to snap and you got to learn to snap well, because one injury to Dahlman, and unfortunately he's out. So it's even possible that they still look maybe in the 3rd or 4th wave of free agency, a Ryan Bates type, right? That guy that can play both center and guard and be your 6th lineman, for lack of a better word. But I would also maybe look to draft another guy, because we all know you can never have enough linemen in camp or on the team.
Yeah, I think we saw that a little bit this year. Well, the one part of the line stayed fine. It was just the left tackle that kept having a revolving door.
Yeah, the only other thing to nitpick, right, is you just brought up is left tackle, right? You don't have a tackle in this draft. So I think at some point in the draft, you do have to draft a development tackle. We know that Ozzie is most likely going to be out for the year. I know Pohl said at least way into the end of the year. Looking at some other comps to him, Rashawn Slater's probably the closest guy I can figure. I know some people, including myself, originally was comping him to Josh Simmons of the Kansas City Chiefs, but he only had a partial rupture. Slater had a full rupture, and he had it August 3rd of last year, and there's still talk that he might not be back for camp. So keep that bigger picture. So we know that Ozzie toured in December. You're talking next December, right? So again, you're talking about weeks 16, 17, 18 at best case scenario. And everybody does their training a little bit differently, but I would have some kind of development tackle in this. And I think there's some good ones that you could maybe get in rounds 3 and 4, depending on where the board falls.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I have only looked at the first round and, consensus first round graded type guys.
I would not take a left tackle in the 1st or 2nd round. Just that's my opinion.
Right. So I have not gotten into offensive tackle depth in this draft class. I would have no idea who to target yet. So again, mock draft 1.0 probably be a little bit different when we get to mock draft 16.0.
Fair enough.
All right. It's time, Gary. Oh, the name that I forgot to mention. I hinted at it. Before we move on. If he falls, another guy who I do think fits the Dennis Allen mold is Keldrick Falk, right? I just don't think he's going to fall. Everything I've seen, he's going to be.
He's got very mixed reviews. Like, some people are in love with him, and some people are like, I could see him fall the 1st round altogether, because he's your true tweener, run edge, defensive end, but really maybe more of a 3 technique, somewhere in the middle. I hate the phrase. He's the Dio body type. Dio's a bad word around the Chicago parts here, but he really does fit that Dio mold. I'm not trying to say he will be Dio. Hopefully Kendrick Falk has a great career, but that's what you're looking for in that type of player realistically.
Yeah. Some people.
I'm glad the one guy you're not allowed to take, or I will kick you in the balls, as I told you. If you mention Proctor again, you're banned from ever hosting your own show again.
Okay.
Because I will come over and kick you in the balls, because Caden Proctor is Alex Leatherwood 2.0, and no one's ever going to convince me otherwise.
I mean, he's definitely a different body size. Can we at least agree on that? He's got 2 inches in height and probably about 1.5 inches more in arm length.
Okay, so is he then Becton that, was awful for the Jets, had one good year on their But the Eagles got paid
there we
by,
go.
and now
Mexi
there's
Beckham,
talk
yeah.
that the Chargers want to cut his ass already because he sucks. So it's like,
Yeah. That's I'll give you that comp.
all right.
All right. We are putting Gary on the hot seat. Look, he did not even know this was not in my outline. I just added it as I was creating the slide. But we want to know what Gary thinks of our Halas Huddle mock offseason as a whole. So don't grade just the salary cap moves. Don't grade just free agency, no draft. I'm hoping the curve of it being as a whole gets us to at least a B for Bears.
I was going to do a B minus. Like, as I was
Okay.
thinking about it, I'll give you a B minus. I think your overall idea is great. I think in free agency, you're going to have to utilize the money better and maybe spread it out more and not go after the Trey Hendrickson type. Maybe, as we talked about, trading for Germaine Johnson, and he's got a little bit smaller cap hit, and then you could use some of those funds to maybe get a better depth players, in the sense of like guys that are maybe starters but really good backups, because you do need that on this team, and we know the war of attrition happens in the NFL. So I knocked you a little bit there, and then I just disagree with some of the stuff you did in the mock draft. It wasn't terrible, but you and I've talked offline. I mentioned a couple times here, I would just have guys a little bit different in position. So it's not bad, right? It's not like I'm giving you an F, right? If you took Proctor, I'd automatically give you an F. But I think it was a B minus for your first kind of attempt at how to fix the Bears in this offseason.
Well, I appreciate it. I feel like that's very kind words and a high grade. I feel like coming from you. You are, as we know, like the insider here at the Halas Huddle. Like, you feed us with the words that you hear from inside Halas Hall. Not everything that I can repeat on the show, or I feel like I can put out there, at least at the time. But I will definitely I come back and give you credit and be like, oh, I should have said something, Gary.
And I just want to admit that, like, I share with you guys what I hear. I'm not trying to report this. People come after me because you're like, you're reporting all this. I share what I hear. It hits or doesn't hit, right? But I feel like I could share it. If I really hit as many times as I wanted to, not saying I'd be Schefter or Rapaport or any of these real guys, but like I'd have a lot better hit rate, and I fully admit to that, right? And things, especially in the off season, things change constantly. So what you hear on one day, by the end of the week, it can be completely different.
100%. And sometimes things get fed as misinformation too. So like that
Absolutely.
could be a part of it.
And I'm being guilty of that too. Like, I know I ended up getting fed bad information before. Fully admit to that. So I just want people to know, like, I just share what I hear. You take it. You want to, anybody could interpret it how they want. That's all I'll say.
It works for me. I really appreciate you coming on the show, filling in for Bob and Justin. And I don't think I prefaced this in the beginning. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I can't recall. But for those of you who are still listening, as we move on to the outro, we will be doing the drawing hopefully before our next episode for who won from parts, or the Mock Offseason Series. All right. Make sure you subscribed. Make sure you are commenting on the other episodes to get into that drawing before we do it. And I got really nothing else. It's sad that football's over. Look, the Seahawks.
Football's still 365 days. The NFL makes sure of that. There's always something, and
yes, there's just no games to watch.
Unless you want to watch the UFL, they're getting ready to launch real quick. So you big UFL guy, and you had a great episode about the stadium, and we know every day there feels like new stadium talk lately. So
yes, Portage,
we'll just
Indiana.
Leave it at that.
If you haven't,
Iowa, Indiana.
Out. Oh yeah, that came out today too.
I'll give Carm this credit. You know, we joked on today's show, like, with CHGO, maybe they'll just move to Botswana at some point.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate again having you on. For those of you who are going to stick with us, I feel like the off season is probably my favorite time. So please be subscribed. Please come back. I shouldn't say favorite time, because now that they're a playoff team, the season is the best time, right? But this span, the going into the free agency, hitting the draft, that part of it is my favorite part of it. Training camp and stuff and preseason doesn't excite me that much at all. So again, hopefully you stick through this. Until we talk again, bear down and claws up.
As after Packers